Hi, I'm Rokk. Welcome to my channel, and today I am going to be baking some more cookies. And I found a Martha Stewart recipe, but I actually found one that doesn't have some exotic ingredient that you cannot find. I found a hazelnut cookie recipe that only has 5 ingredients, if you don't count water, and got this big, beautiful bag of hazelnuts here. And the first step is preheating the oven to 375 degrees, and I measured out what was supposed to be a half a cup of the hazelnuts, and I am supposed to toast them in the oven. But because I can't edit on this tablet, this is what I did already. And this is what they look like right now. But after you take them out of the oven, you toast them for like 10 to 15 minutes, just till you start to smell this nutty smell. But you have to let them cool completely. And then once you do, put them into a bowl like this one here. And then take a paper towel and grab it like this, and I'm rubbing as many of the skins as possible off. Not all of them will come off, but if you take most of the hazelnut skins off, the skins are where some of the bitterness is, and you don't really want that in a cookie. And as soon as I have most of the skins off, and you can see the paper towel makes it a little bit easier to grip the skins, or you could just use your bare hands and go like this. When it looks like most of them are off, you grind them. I was going to use a different grinder, but I was still having a hard time taking out the hard, moist, these super beets that I had acquired that had moisture got to them and they were ruined, and I tried to grind them up and that ruined a grinder, so I'm using the better coffee grinder. And just gonna stick them in. Now the recipe called for a half a cup, but I actually measured out 2/3 of a cup, because when you're measuring a whole nut but then you grind it, you noticed how there's all that extra, that air space that a whole of anything is going to take up, but if you grind it up, you can compact a lot more into that measurement. So 2/3 of a cup of whole nuts. Once you grind them up, it's going to be closer to that half a cup. And I really don't want to scrimp on the hazelnuts. I was specifically looking for a recipe that was doable within this time frame. This camera shuts off. I don't want to have to go through that. I'm going to grind these up. You grind them till they're finely ground, but you don't grind them into a paste. And since any nut has a lot of oil, there's always that danger. One more thing, you have to make sure when you do toast these in the oven that you let these nuts cool completely before you grind them. It's when the nuts are still warm that it gets too easy for it to turn into that paste. When it gets oily looking and liquid, then you know you've gone too far. So what you want is something that's crumbly and mealy, kind of like a graham cracker crust, like crumbled graham crackers that you would press if you were making a pie crust. That's the consistency you're looking for. I wish you could see exactly what it was looking like here. It's usually a good idea to... Here, I'm going to pull this out of the plug and I'm going to hold it closer to the camera here so that you can hopefully see. Of course, I don't think you're really getting the light where exactly I want it, but if you could feel this, it smells Oh, this smells good. I imagine you could substitute peanuts if you wanted to, but hazelnuts have a really distinctive smell and taste, and I really wanted to take advantage of that for the recipe. This is what the husks, you know, those membranes from the nut itself look like. Now they're out of this. I set this aside. After you finish with the 375-degree oven, then you're supposed to turn it back down to 350, which is what the actual baking is going to be. Now I am going to set these aside. You know what? I should actually put these in a dish of some kind. And that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to, doesn't really matter exactly what it is, because it's just something to, and you'll see that because this is a nut, and nuts have so much oil in them, this definitely will stick to the edges of your grinder, but that's okay. And yes, this will be a little bit more than the half a cup, but I don't think that will be bad. Now, usually, or a lot of times when I make recipes, I play a little fast and loose with them. I take them as general guides. I don't always get exact. And I know with baking, you're not really supposed to do that. But since this is a Martha Stewart recipe, I'm actually going to follow it, because I'm going to defer to her. She's somebody who's gained an awful lot of respect through the years for her business acumen and her domestic gifts that she has chosen to share with the world. This is what this looks like. I set this aside. Now I am going to, I have the mixer out, the electric mixer, and I'm going to put the beaters on it, because I have to cream some butter and some sugar together. And this recipe calls for a half a cup, which is 1 stick of, it says unsalted butter softened. I didn't get unsalted butter. I'm going to go ahead with the salted. I don't mind them being a little less sweet, and I think nuts should have some salt in them anyway. So it also calls for a half a cup of sugar. And I have the sugar in here. See, this is a 2/3 measuring cup. And this is a 1/4 cup measuring cup. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fill the 1/4 cup measuring cup twice, because 2 quarters, of course, is the same thing as a half. And I'm going to measure out the sugar. You notice I didn't do a cat for the turnaround, because I knew I would just have to wash my hands afterwards. But, oh, I was very tempted when I saw Cassie down there. There's the sugar. I am going to seal this up so that it doesn't fall over something. One thing, since the stove is nice and hot because the oven's reheated, I don't think we're going to have any problems with any cats getting on the stove. That's something that we have been dealing with a lot lately. Now this here is most of a stick of butter. It's got a little bit dug out, so I am going to make up for that by adding some butter from this big thing here. And I'm assuming that this bit here will make up for this to make a stick. Maybe I might need a little bit more. I don't know. I'm hoping you guys can see me. I'm filming with a tablet, so hopefully there should not be any problems with the sound on this. And I'm going to have to reach over here to plug this mixer in. I've gotten more use out of this mixer this year than I bet I've gotten in the last 20 years. I have firmly embraced pandemic baking. Okay, I'm going to start on low. Oh boy. You know what? I probably should have just done this with a knife, with two knives. Oops. You see that? Okay. I am going to actually, now I have to, and I deliberately did not practice this ahead of time, because the whole idea of this was more of an experiment than anything else. I cook because I enjoy cooking, and we're not always best at everything that we enjoy, especially if we don't have a whole lot of practice. I'm having problems getting this even in here. Okay. I wish this bowl was deeper so that I could keep the stuff from getting airborne. Now, since you're supposed to be able to get it light and fluffy in 3 minutes, I don't think so. I should get a rubber spatula so that I can take the sides and put it more toward the middle. This is probably one of the harder aspects to baking, I think, is using a hand mixer, because more of it goes airborne than stays in a bowl. Yeah, I don't know how light and fluffy this is, and then there's so much of it that sticks onto the beaters, and that's going to be a challenge to get them off. Yeah, you can tell I got a lot of practice in here, don't you? And try to clean these off as best I can. Do any of you get to lick off the batter when your mom or dad did any baking when you were a kid? When it was still safe, back in the days before people knew about raw eggs and salmonella and things. Of course, you don't have to worry if there's nothing like that in your batter or something. But anything chocolate, oh, I always lick the batter. There isn't any chocolate in this recipe. And I'm not adding any to it. I'm just going to take these, have these as the recipe intends. Boy, you don't realize how much surface area a pair of metal beaters has. It's a lot. But if I leave too much on here, that could be a couple of spoonfuls of sugar and butter that would really be needed for recipes. One of the things that really gets on my nerves when I watch chefs on video is when they don't get everything out of their dishes that have the measured ingredients as they're adding to something. If they leave a lot of the eggs as they're adding them out of the shell, if they don't use a spatula to clean something off when they're decanting it into the mixing bowl, that bothers me. I keep on thinking of how that recipe isn't going to taste exactly right because it doesn't have the perfect proportion as intended, because half the stuff that you're adding is still in those measuring cups, and it just bugs me. And I know that they're pressed for time and that they know that they have to edit this, and there's so much that I don't know about the workflow of these creators, and all I know is what my experience is like being a content creator. So but one thing I could tell you, for doing this more than 10 years, it's a lot harder than it looks. Okay, got these in here. Now I am going to add the flour, the ground hazelnuts, and the salt. And here's the flour. And this calls for 1.5 cups all-purpose flour. So I'm going to get the 1 cup measuring cup here. One cup. And this is a 4th cup. Get a 4th cup of this flour. And another 4th cup. And if it seems like this one's a little bit scant, I think the other 4th cup was a wee tiny little bit rounded, and you really want to be as accurate as possible when you're measuring out baking ingredients. Okay, now it's time for the hazelnuts, and I'm going to kind of sort of measure these out. Oh, some of that stuff, that butter sugar mixture, flew clear over. The baking pan is right here. You don't see it in the frame, and that stuff scatters all over. I'm looking for, I wish I could find a 1/2 cup measuring thing. I couldn't find. Oh, here it is. All right, I am going to see how much a half a cup of these fits from this. And I suppose you could pack these a little bit because it's very oily, very moist. I don't know if this is even in the frame. What I'm doing here, I'm transferring the ground up hazelnuts to the half cup thing so that I can get a better idea of just how much. I always like to allow for a little bit extra when it comes to nuts. I love them so much. This is a half a cup thing. I'm just gonna. This kitchen smells all full of hazelnuts. I could just imagine how good it's going to smell when it's baking. The directions don't say anything about having to grease the sheet. These are okay. All the ingredients are there. Oh, and salt. A half a cup. It says coarse salt. But you know what? If the salt you have is not coarse, it really doesn't matter. This is a real interesting measuring shot glass. And it has teaspoon, half teaspoon, milliliter, ounces. And so if I'm looking for, let's see, teaspoon. This looks more like half. It's more like a full. I don't want to waste salt. You don't realize what a precious commodity salt has until you think you're running out of it. Did you see this? Did you see this? Bad. Well, Cassie is a butter thief. So the first thing I'm going to do is put butter in the fridge. Second thing, of course, I got to do now is wash my hands. Again, don't let me forget to add the salt to the dough mixture. You see how she is? And I can't, it doesn't do any good to yell at that cat because she is deaf. She's licking her chops, boy. Okay, now it says you don't add the water to it until you've already been beating it for a while. I hope you could see what I'm doing. Keep everything in the frame here. I'm going to use this spatula to fold the ingredients together at first. I'm sure not going to be using any more electric beaters. That thing, can you imagine these dry ingredients? They would go airborne. There'd be a big cloud of white. You wouldn't be able to see me and everything would get wasted. Nah, I'm not going to do that. Of course, when it's really, really cold outside and you have the oven on, one of the things, I don't know if all heating systems are like that, but where I live, when the oven's on, it tricks the heating system into thinking it's not so cold out, so then the furnace doesn't kick on as much. So even though the kitchen feels nice and comfortable, I don't know that the rest of the house does. So whenever I have the oven on for any length of time, people end up just feeling so much colder. Tomorrow is supposed to warm up some, so a lot of the snow is going to melt off. And in a couple of days, we're expecting some rain. So if anybody had a hard time accessing any places because of snow drifts and things, and if you live in the eastern seaboard, maybe you might get a bit of a melt up too. The good thing that you can do, considering that these things have a blade shape to them, you can use that to break up lumps as you see them. And you know what? I didn't add the salt yet. Actually, you know what I always thought that they should have done is added the salt, mixed the salt in with the water that you add, and then add it that way. But the thing is, this calls for 2 tablespoons of water. You're supposed to add 1 tablespoon at a time to see just how much you needed for your dough mixture. So it's kind of understandable that if you only ended up using half the water and yet you added the salt to the whole water mixture, then you would end up not having enough salt if you did it that way. So I guess I can understand the reasoning for just mixing the dry ingredients together and then adding the wet ingredients. Anything that's stuck to the edges, just move off so that it can get incorporated into everything else. Okay, this looks like it's about as mixed up as it's going to be mixed. Now it's time for the water. It says, yeah, drizzle 1 to 2 tablespoons of water, 1 tablespoon at a time to help form a dough. So I'm going to go back to this shot glass. Let me see if it says it's supposed to be ice water. Some recipes actually call for ice water, but this doesn't. Okay. You know what? That was 2 tablespoons there. That wasn't very gradual. And I don't think that's going to be enough to make a dough out of this, to tell you the truth. But you know what? I'm going to take my bracelets off because I think I'm going to have to get my hands in there. Yeah. And this actually is real silver. That's going to... Alright, yeah. I don't see how this could possibly form a dough with just 2 tablespoons. So I'm going to get some more water here. And this looks like another, this looks like almost 2 tablespoons more here. There. Okay, now that's a total of 4 tablespoons water I put in this. I guess it's going to be kind of like cutting it into this crumbly mixture here. And you know what? I'm going to get some more water. And I guess I'm just going to have to keep on adding to until I get here. Ah, well, Martha, your mileage may vary. I'm kind of sorry that I don't have rubber gloves for this. Looks like I'm going to have to really get my hands in here. Now I'm just going to I don't know if I would really call this consistency that of a dough. I'm going to scrunch it up in my hands, try to get it to form that kind of cohesive unit you think of when you think of a dough. No, this needs more water. Just there. That should do it. I'm just going to squish it in my hands as if I was making a meatloaf. One of the things I used to love doing when I was a little girl, helping Mom out in the kitchen, and she'd be making meatloaves, and she never liked the feeling of that wet meat mixture in her hands, so she always let me do that, and she felt like that about stuffing turkeys too. She didn't like getting her hands in and stuff, and I get my hands in and squish the egg in and squish the ingredients together, and kids like to help Mom in the kitchen, you know. Boy. This is very crumbly. I don't know how she could think that you can use 1 to 2 tablespoons of water to make this dough. I don't know what she was smoking. She should save some for me. You know, she's buddies with Snoop Dogg, so maybe she did figure out the joys of cannabis. Okay, all right, I'm gonna need some more water. This is ridiculous. And I don't think that's gonna be too much either. I have to be able to make 1-inch balls out of this, and that's what I'm gonna be putting on the cookie sheet. And her recipe recommends putting them on parchment first, but I'm just going to put them straight on the cookie sheet. Okay, this is feeling like more like a dough than it did. This is what the dough looks like. I wish you could smell this. Someday the major computer companies are going to have that smell-o-vision thing, and you'll be able to smell people's cooking videos and stuff. Oh yeah, Cassie, I see you. And I am not going to pick you up right now. And this is a little bit bigger than a 1-inch ball, and these are supposed to be spread out 2 inches on the sheet. So I'm going to put the light on as if I think that's going to help you see things any better. I may need to get out one of the smaller trays for overflow. I think I'm going to need more room. I see you. Smell this, Mom. Smell. Smell that? My mother likes the smell of cookie dough. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get out one more. Or I could just try to crowd him into here. This is what a tray of these looks like. And I am going to, but I want to get this other little tray. I could put a few more in. Maybe I'll make these ones a little bit smaller, just so it doesn't look stupid like I just have, you know, 2 cookies on a tray or something. Okay. Now these you're supposed to score with forks. So these you take a fork, and each one of these you press like this and like this, like a crisscross pattern. On these ones here. Every little bit left piece of this batter I can find. Waste not, want not. Now I finally put the tray in. And here we go, here and here. And the time I'm doing this right now is exactly 9:30. So now it says that these only take 10 to 15 minutes, but what you do is halfway through you're supposed to turn the pan. So, and I might as well get the wire racks out so that when these are done, I can pull them off. And these are my racks up here. Wouldn't make too much sense to put them on the stove since the stove's going to be hot even when I finally turn the oven off. So I am going to put these right here, and I just cleaned the kitchen table off earlier so that, and right now Cassie's being a good girl and she's over sleeping on a chair, so she's not going to be getting her gungy bungees on the table. Darling that she is. Okay. All we can do right now is wait. And it's never a bad